Welcome back to our show of appreciating veterans, especially on Sunday. I'm Dave Adams, your host. I'm here with Mr. Bob Martin. He's a member of the San Francisco Vegetarian Society. I want to thank the Post 875 for making this space available, and the Albert and Willie Lee Johnson Family Fund for making this program available and providing me with a chance to host the show. Also, I want to thank MS34 for also being here, and looks like we're going to have a good show today. Mr. Martin has been a friend of Mr. Johnson's in the previous working at the TV studio.
At KQED.
Great. Okay, well, what we're going to do today is talk about how to make vets healthy through a nutritional diet. You know, a lot of vets have coronary heart disease, so you're going to give us some good suggestions on how to live a healthy life through eating a nutritional diet.
That's correct, yes.
The number one subject on health not taught in medical schools is what?
Nutrition. In other words, we have, of the hundreds of medical schools in the United States, maybe about 130, there's not one that has a requirement for nutrition, which is just, we find that amazing, given that probably 70% of diseases is nutrition or diet related. And by making some rather simple choices in terms of what we put in our mouths, we can actually prevent or avoid or reverse a lot of major illnesses, including diabetes type 2, heart disease, cancer, stroke, obesity, impotence, believe it or not, and basically avoid the things that killed my mother, that caused my father to have a stroke, that caused my brother to have a heart attack in the last month, that caused my great uncle to die of a heart attack at age 63. In other words, these are things that are killing our families, and so if we can make some simple choices, delicious choices by the way, we can actually avoid these major problems with and stay healthy. And someone once said the first wealth is health. In other words, you could be successful in life, but if you lose your health, what's the point?
Right. The number one political lobby in Washington, D.C. influences our food choices?
Yes, we have powerful lobbyists in Washington, including the meat industry, the dairy industry, the pork industry. You remember when Oprah got in trouble by disparaging eating red meat, yes. The Cattlemen's Association came down on her hard. But fortunately, it was Oprah. They didn't know who they were fighting against, and Oprah won that case. In other words, anytime you speak out against the dairy industry, or the egg industry, or the poultry industry, or the meat industry, you know, you're talking some serious players in Washington. And so, you could be Barack Obama running for president in Iowa, and if you say that you're a vegetarian, there goes you're over. You're history. You're toast.
Great. What's the number one influence on health?
It's nutrition, and one of the major sources for information on nutrition is a fellow by the name of Dr. Colin Campbell. Dr. Campbell wrote a book called The China Study, and he said that in that study that there are 27 institutes of health in Washington, D.C. Not one of them is dedicated to nutrition. Not one. Most doctors do not understand nutrition. Doctors would rather do surgery. They'd rather give you a pill, but they rarely ever ask you what you had for breakfast or what you had for dinner, and which is extraordinary considering that nutrition can, as I said earlier, can definitely reverse diabetes, avoid cancer, reverse heart disease, avoid stroke. These are pretty important things, and so you can love your meat, and I was raised on meat and potatoes like everybody else in this country. But luckily, I met a woman years ago, and she put me on the path. It took a few years, and I'll be 70 years old in about 11 days.
Great, great. So those 27 senators in Washington, D.C., how many do you think are dedicated to health?
Well, they deal with health, but they deal with it through the back door. Why not deal with it through the front door? In other words, what you put in your mouth, you can, in other words, a lot of people think that when you eat a plant-based diet, it has to be boring. That is absolutely untrue. We have an event with the San Francisco Vegetarian Society every year. This year it'll be October 1st and 2nd in Golden Gate Park. Saturday and Sunday, 2-day event. Last year we had about 6,000 people. We had about 200 vendors serving plant-based foods, and I can tell you that even if you're a confirmed meat eater, like yourself, sir,
you know I am.
Love that red meat and so forth, even though it may give you colon cancer. But the fact is, when you go to that, you've come to our event, get there before 10:30, it's free. Otherwise, it's about $7. But if you come there, and you'll have the most delicious plant-based foods, and you'll be shocked at how delicious they are. We might even convert you. Who knows?
I don't know about that one, but it's worth checking out.
Yeah, for sure. In other words, they say that an open mind is like a parachute, or a parachute is like an open mind. Either way, it only works when it's open, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The number one pill most and many men are interested in, what's that?
Viagra. Okay.
Wow.
And Viagra is another symptom for letting you know that your arteries and your veins and your capillaries are being clogged up by animal fat. So if you avoid animal fat, in other words, milk, cheese, dairy, pork, chicken, fish, etc., your arteries, capillaries will open up, and there's no more need for that little blue pill.
Aha. Very interesting. 80% of veterans 20 years or older have what disease? Heart
disease. In other words, when in World War, during the Korean War, when the killed soldiers came back from Korea, we did autopsies on several hundreds of these Korean vets. We found out that about 80% of them had clogged arteries. 20-year-olds, clogged arteries. In other words, the same diseases that killed my mother, killed my uncle, caused my sister-in-law, who's a piano genius, to have different cancers. And so these are things we can avoid very easily, and that's the point. In other words, we're not talking boring, we're not talking work, we're talking delicious, we're talking pleasurable.
Wouldn't you figure the U.S. government is giving our soldiers good food?
This is the reason that they give our soldiers cheese and milk and pork is because powerful interests manipulate our choices, our food choices. I mean, I know that what I'm talking about today is what they call there's a word called Sisyphean, which means that it's like pushing a boulder up a hill. You know, it's an uphill battle to convince people that by doing a plant-based diet, they can reverse disease and have a good time, because you hear commercials all day long on the radio for Kentucky Fried Chicken and pizza with sausage and dairy, and you hear that all day long. So someone like me, one voice in the wilderness, saying that, let's take a look at that picture. Who are the powerful financial people who are trying to get us to eat these products, these animal-based products? And this is a powerful lobby in Washington, D.C. And the problem is we spend $2 trillion a year plus on health in this country, and 70% of those costs could be reversed or avoided by doing a plant-based diet. And more people are aware of that fact.
So, okay, I want you to talk a little bit more on what you just said, more in detail. What kind of absolute foods are you talking about? Well,
we're talking grains, we're talking rice, we're talking potatoes, we're talking vegetables, we're talking fruits, nuts. I mean, these are things, in other words, we share 99% of the DNA of other species, gorillas in particular. We share 99% of their DNA. And what is the diet of an animal in the wild like that? It's plant-based. And in fact, eggs and bacon was the a creation of a public relations firm back in the 20s and 30s that get people to eat bacon and eggs. Before that, people were eating Kellogg's cereal and Post cereal and so forth. but it was a public relations campaign that actually convinced people to eat bacon and eggs way back when. So this is not a natural thing, actually. It's marketing. It's marketing, and it's not really concerned about our health, but it's concerned about the big muddy dollar.
You know, a lot of kids today might not have time to eat that healthy diet you're talking about. How do you figure we're going to get kids and people like myself that really, you know, were raised on what we were raised on, our meat-based diets?
Like me, yeah, raised on meat and potatoes. And I was come from Minnesota. We used to go down to the farm in Wisconsin. Used to milk those cows on our family farm.
Hey, good old American cows got to be healthy. Isn't that a healthy diet?
Well, to be honest with you, if you think about milk, why are humans the only species that drink the milk of another species? I mean, this is crazy. If we're drinking cow's milk, why not dog's milk or pig milk? Or, I mean, it's insane. We don't see any other animal on the planet drinking the milk of another species. So it's marketing is what it comes down to. It has nothing to do with health. It's marketing. In fact, the people who drink the most milk, the Scandinavians, the Americans, the Germans, they have the most bone disease, the most osteoporosis. So the more milk you drink, it's actually opposite of what you've been told. You've been told that if you drink a lot of milk, your bones will be strong. But the people who have the worst bones when they get older are the Scandinavians, the Swedes, the Danes, the Norwegians, the Germans, and so forth. They drink the most milk. So you can be guaranteed that down the road, you drink all that milk that they're telling you to drink. Milk is supposed to be good for you. That's not true. You can be guaranteed that you will have osteoporosis. That's just a fact of life.
What other foods do you figure are not really good that, you know, I guess we have in our American diet?
Well, again, plant-based foods are what you want to be aiming towards. The foods that we're raised on, the hamburgers, the McDonald's, the Kentucky Fried Chickens, these are all delicious foods. I can see that. I was raised on that food. But unfortunately, we have an epidemic of cancer. We have an epidemic of heart disease. We have an epidemic of obesity. Type 2 diabetes is killing us. I'm in the insurance field. I've also often dealt with people on Medicare. One of my most tragic experiences was talking to a woman out in the Bayview who had type 2 diabetes, and she had already had her legs amputated. This was a woman in her early 50s. This is diseases of circulation. This is diseases of animal fat in the diet. This woman in her early 50s was in a wheelchair with both of her legs amputated. So by changing your diet, and it can be rather inexpensive as well. We're not talking about big bucks here, but you know, people say it's radical to be on a plant-based diet. But what's more radical, having your chest opened up with a saw and having your arteries unclogged? That's pretty radical, in my opinion.
Give us a couple of good foods, because a lot of people are just watching, probably, you know, they don't have a big budget. They agree with you that they don't want to dig too deep. So what are some of the foods you can go to your supermarket and get to start the process? Nothing's easy, but what do you think they can start doing?
I would say take a trip over to Rainbow Grocery if that's not too far in San Francisco, or anywhere actually. You can get some nice brown rice, get some soy-based products that are meat substitutes, lots of vegetables. These are absolutely delicious foods. I can prepare a really great meal in 20, 30 minutes. Everybody's got 20, 30 minutes. I don't care how busy you are. And if it's going to cause you to be healthier, and it's also ecologically healthy. I mean, you may or may not have kids, but I know that you're concerned about the future of the planet. And it turns out that the whole process of raising meat, from cattle production to the way we produce chickens and pork, this is extremely destructive to the environment. I mean, if you were to go out to a slaughterhouse or one of those factory farms and see the horrible amounts of waste that contaminates the streams and the creeks and the rivers and so forth, the waste material from these factory farms is absolutely just incredible. I mean, it will give you nightmares to understand that this waste is going down into the well water and causing contamination, and we're having horrible diseases of cancer and so forth. And this is reversible by being on a plant-based diet.
Great. Personally, I like to add to people out there watching that usually I just bake boil or barbecue my chicken. And yes, I do cut the fat off. Not long ago, I was up for a heart attack myself, so I can lend a little bit of credibility to what he's saying, and that if you do change your diet, gradually, you can add some time onto your life. What I want to ask is, what's changing your eating habits for yourself, make you feel better?
I met a woman back in 1979, down in Beverly Hills in L.A., and she was eating brown rice and tofu and lentils and aduki beans and so forth every day. And I thought she was kind of a nutcase. She was a great friend of mine and my girlfriend. But one day she gave me some tofu and brown rice, and I thought, wow, this is not that bad. So that was what put me on the path, and again, that was about 30 or so years ago, not quite. And as I said, I'm going to be 70 years old in about 11 days, and I've seen everybody in my family. They consider me a little bit crazy. They've all had strokes, heart attacks, cancer, you name it. They've all had those problems. My brother's just had his 71st birthday yesterday, and he had a heart attack about 6 weeks ago. So if you said that you were a candidate for a heart attack, what might even be worse than a heart attack is having a stroke. Again, I'm telling you, I'm in the insurance industry, and one day I was interviewing a gentleman over in Oakland, and after a while I asked about his wife. He told me that his wife is in the other room, and I said, oh, really? And he said that she's been in that room for 10 years in bed having had a stroke. I mean, 10 years in bed having had a stroke that was completely preventable. And so, you love your meat, and I totally respect that because that's the way you were raised. But if you were to come to our San Francisco Vegetarian event October 1st and October 2nd in Golden Gate Park, 9th and Lincoln, and try some of those extremely delicious plant-based foods, you'll be tripped out.
Tell us about what you ate, in the military, and what do you think that diet does to our gentlemen, like not only like when you were in, but like nowadays? The military has come up great ways in trying to improve their diets. I guess what I'm asking is, what can a person do that's on the run, don't have a lot of time, and doesn't like to buy a lot of food? Is there like a quick based answer or what?
Yeah, in other words, every food that we have out there that's animal based, there's a plant based substitute. And to be honest with you, a few years ago, some of those vegan cheeses were pretty boring. But today, you can get some vegan cheeses, in other words, non-dairy, 100% non-dairy, that are absolutely delicious. So you can get even fast food that's plant-based. So we've got lots of choices out there, but you have to, if you go to your Whole Foods, you go to Rainbow Grocery in San Francisco, you go to some of these markets, you can find some great alternatives that are just phenomenal. And again, I was in the military from 1959 to 1963, and I was eating the same stuff that everybody else was eating. And I was, again, raised in Minnesota and raised also on a farm in Wisconsin, or spent time on our family farm and was out there milking the cows and the whole thing, watching my great uncle chop the head off of a chicken and have that chicken for dinner. And so that was the way it was. But when I opened up to looking at another way, to having an ecologically sustainable diet that was plant-based, and I know for a fact that there's a very small chance that I'll ever have heart disease or cancer or diabetes or any of those other scourges. Pretty good chance I'll never have that, and I'll never need that little blue pill, Viagra, either.
Great. Kind of surprised at your age 70. We swore you were a little bit younger than that. Some suggestions that I want to make myself is, for all you veterans out there, make sure that you check in with the VA. You have a healthcare provider and you know the status of your health. That way you can start on this great diet plan that Mr. Martin has here. Also, of course, no drinking and no drugs. You have to be straight before you start any kind of plan or regimen, and VA is going to make sure that you're clean before you start treatment. But once again, if you're a veteran, go to VA, make sure you have your healthcare provider, and get a full checkout. And if you're close to coronary problems, they will let you know. Then you're going to want to get on this diet that Mr. Martin is talking about. So keep that in mind. Also, we'd like you to visit AMVETS here on Sunday. Go ahead.
Yeah, may I also let you know what our website is. It's SFVS, that's San Francisco Vegetarian Society, sfvs.org. That's our website. We have lots of resource materials. And we have potlucks on a regular basis in San Francisco and throughout the Bay Area. And we have great authors like John Robbins. People probably don't know who John Robbins is, but they certainly know who Baskin Robbins is. Baskin Robbins was the ice cream empire that still exists, and John Robbins was the heir to the empire, and he said thank you but no thank you to all that ice cream money. And he wrote a book called Diet for a New America that came out about 1980 or so, 85. It was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, and it explains the whole rationale for the ethics of being plant-based, the nutritional aspects, the ecologically plant-based, the fact that it's extremely good for your health. I mean, who wants to have type 2 diabetes? Who wants to wake up with coronary heart disease? Who wants to have a stroke? Who wants to have cancer? These are things that we can pretty much eliminate or avoid or reverse on a plant-based diet. This is not rocket science. We're not designed to eat animals. We're not. I mean, we don't have the teeth. We don't have the claws of a cat or a lion or a dog. This is marketing that's caused us to be eating animal-based. It's marketing. It has nothing to do with nutrition or science. But we're gatherer hunters. We have the fingers for harvesting and grains and so forth. But again, go to our website, sfvs.org, and it's great resource materials. And again, we have these great potlucks in San Francisco, like almost every week. And we have lectures that are phenomenal and right in San Francisco. And this is great information to, number one, avoid heart disease, reverse heart disease, avoid stroke, avoid cancer, type 2 diabetes, etc. I mean, we're talking major improvements in our life. $2 trillion a year spent on health in this country. This actually should be called disease care, not health care. And that's a lot of money. And right now, as you know, our economy is in trouble, and we're spending billions of dollars a year, trillions of dollars a year, and we can eliminate most of those costs by, among other things, looking at a plant-based diet. And we don't expect people to make that change in one day or one week or 1 month, but certainly over time, when you've tried and eaten some of these delicious foods that we're talking about. I mean, we're not talking boring. We're not talking celery sticks and carrots, right? We're talking delicious foods.
Give us an example of some of those foods you're talking about.
Some of the soy-based products, some of the tofu-based products that can be made to taste like bacon or chicken or whatever. The brown rice, the different vegetarian things that are out there. I mean, we're talking inexpensive, easy to prepare. And, I mean, if these were not pleasurable foods, I mean, believe me, I wouldn't be doing it. We're talking pleasure.
Yeah, people, sometimes it takes a while to get used to those things, but like he said, stroke's a bad thing.
It's a horrible thing.
They're going to stick these stents in your veins there to clean them out, to get the clogging out, and that's very painful. Also, getting a stroke, you might be, like he said, in a room for 5, 10, 15 years, or even in a diabetic coma. So it's imperative that all of our listeners, like I say, go check your health out from a licensed healthcare professional to assure your status. And if you learn that you're in coronary danger, or if you have diabetes, hypertension, any of those things, you're going to want to make sure that you get on the diet that Mr. Martin is talking about. And once again, why don't you give us some examples just one more time of the foods that
Brown rice is good, but remember what I said earlier, that there's about 130 medical schools in the United States. Not one of them has a requirement for nutrition from your medical doctor. So your medical doctor probably doesn't even understand this information, him or herself. They would rather do the surgery. I mean, a doctor would rather perform a $50,000 coronary operation so he can make that or he or she can make that Porsche payment. That second home up at Tahoe or Vail, Colorado. So the point is that if the doctor has not studied nutrition in medical school, they're going to prescribe a pill or a knife. All right?
Sure.
And you said yourself that you were told that you have heart disease?
Diabetes.
Diabetes?
Yes.
Type 2?
Yes.
Okay. That's horrible. We're talking amputation down the road, or blindness. All right.
If I don't control my diet correctly, that's correct.
So, and I know you said that you'll never give up your meat, but
that's not true.
Okay.
That's nobody likes to have somebody come to them and tell them take this diet that I got.
I know.
So,
it's an uphill struggle. So yeah. So rather than talk about the negative, let's talk about the positive. In other words, if you have the time on that it's October 1st and 2nd.
Right. Tell us those dates again. We just got about like 4 minutes left. We did pretty good talking. So tell us those dates one more time for our listeners. Where they at and how to get there.
Okay. And remember, the website is SFVS. That's San Francisco Vegetarian Society. SFVS.org. October 1st, October 2nd, 2011. And this is in Golden Gate Park at 9th and Lincoln. Right in the corner there, you'll see our signs, and get there early in the morning. It starts about 10 o'clock. Get there 9:30, 10 o'clock, and it's free. After 10:30, I believe it's going to be $7, which that's nominal. But we'll have 200 different vendors there serving plant-based foods. We'll have great lectures, entertainment. There's entertainment for kids. There's jugglers. There's hundreds of different books and authors will be speaking. And again, last year we had just about 6,000 people. We've received awards from the city for what we're doing. We started the whole Meatless Mondays campaign, which is spreading all around the country. But remember, the whole point is to be positive. We realize that what we're talking about here today may seem radical, but in actuality, it's more radical to have your heart operated on. My brother, having had a heart attack about 2 weeks ago, I don't think that was a fun experience. But again, I've seen all my family have heart disease, and they consider me the crazy guy in the family. And they've all had heart disease. They've all had cancers. My mother died of a stroke. My father is really suffering horribly right now with a stroke and down in LA at age 92, 93. So you can find these wonderful substitutes that are delicious that will reverse your your diabetes within about 3 weeks without pills. So, I mean, type 2 diabetes eventually does lead to amputation, blindness, and other complications that can be easily reversed with no medication and no surgery.